Well, it's 5 o'clock. So I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment. It is 5 p.m. on Monday, December the 16th, 2024. And we are at the NII building in Port Elgin. Just before we start, I just wanted to acknowledge that I had left a couple of things for members of the committee. We had a town volunteer appreciation dinner, and unfortunately, none of the citizen volunteers, or they're not really volunteers, but the citizen members of our committee weren't able to attend. So they got their certificates and their little gift today. And I'll just also acknowledge that it's Chad's last meeting. So he's leaving the committee after this meeting. So I'll get that out of the way up front. So thank you very much, Chad. Thank you very much, all of you, for participating over the last 2 years. And I believe that Rachel is reading the land acknowledgement. Is that correct? Thank you, Councillor Stack.
We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people, and we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing alongside the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a disclosure of pecuniary interest. Any member can declare now or at any point during the meeting. Seeing none, we have 2 sets of minutes to adopt. One set is from August the 26th from that meeting, and the other one is from September the 16th. I'll entertain motions separately for each of them. Can I have Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt recommends that the Committee of Adjustment approve the minutes of August the 26th, 2024 has presented. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Stack. Are there any comments, corrections, amendments? Seeing none, all in favor? Those minutes are carried. I'll entertain a motion for the other minutes. Member Wallace moves that the Committee of Adjustment approve the minutes of September the 16th, 2024 has presented. A seconder is Member Martin. Any comments about those minutes? All in favor? Those minutes are carried. We had 2 items on the new business agenda, and I will just indicate that 5.1, the public hearing that was on the agenda was canceled. It was for a minor variance at 91 Grosvenor Street South in Southampton. The applicant has altered the proposed configuration to comply with all aspects of the zoning bylaw and has such minor variance file A-2024-011 is no longer required. So we don't have to deal with that one. And we'll welcome Richard back to the meeting. That's okay. The next one, 5.2 on the agenda, is a public hearing, and it's file A-2024-042, minor variance 574 Harbor Street. And this is a public hearing under the Planning Act, and I'd like to welcome members of the public into the chamber or into the facility today who are here in person, and I know there's perhaps 1 or 2 also online watching. If anyone from the public is interested in this application or wishes to receive a notice of the decision, please send an email to BCPLPE, which Bruce County Planning, Port Elgin, bcplpe@brucecounty.on.ca. And so that's if you're interested in receiving a notice of the decision. First, we're going to receive a report from the county planner, Jake Bosfield Bastido. Then we will hear from the public who are here in person or virtually, or who have completed or submitted correspondence to the county via email. Then committee members will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions, and I will ask them to reserve their comments on the application until the public hearing has closed. So they're able to ask questions first and then we'll comment after we close the public hearing. Members of the public are advised that the right to appeal the decision on this application is limited to specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act, or the owner or applicant of the land subject to the amendment who have provided oral or written comments to this committee on the application before the decision is made. I now declare the public hearing open and ask the planner on the file to present the application. Jake?
All right, good evening all. So the application before us tonight is an extension to a legal non-conforming use to rebuild an existing cottage on the same footprint, but instead of being a story and a half, it would be 2 full stories. So I know that staff had circulated some direction on these sorts of applications, but just to reiterate, this legal non-conforming type of application, it's not a minor variance subject to the 4 tests that we usually see, but rather 2 tests prescribed in the Planning Act. And those 2 tests are, first, whether the application is desirable for the appropriate development of the subject property. Second, whether the application will result in undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood. So I'll provide an analysis of those 2 tests, but first just wanted to clarify what makes this legal non-conforming. So in the planning report, there's 3 provisions of the zoning bylaw that are not met. So first is the existing the existing property is deficient in the minimum lot area just by 4 square meters. The front yard setback, where 6 meters is required, 3.95 is provided. And in the rear yard depth, where 7.5 meters is required, 1.26 meters is provided. So, and that, just to reiterate, that rear yard is the one opposite Harbor Street along the south lot line. The applicant has provided the required documentation to demonstrate that this cottage was legally established prior to the zoning bylaw. So first, the application is considered desirable for the appropriate development of the subject property. The residential use is permitted in both the official plan and the zoning bylaw. Reconstruction of the aging cottage will allow an enhanced use of the second story. And with the application, we received further information in support of natural hazard and cultural heritage review, and no issues were identified there. Secondly, the application is not anticipated to cause undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood. So the result of this application would be a built form typical of the area, a 2-story dwelling, including neighboring properties. So what's unique about the property is where the front yard is along Harbor Street means that the southern lot line is considered the rear yard, although functioning in effect as a side yard, in which case greater than the 1.2 meters prescribed in the zoning bylaw is provided. In review, town staff had noted an encroachment issue on the survey. That's an existing concrete paver going onto the beach. A condition of the decision sheet has been drafted for the committee's consideration to ensure this is managed, and preliminary discussions with the applicant and landowner, they've indicated that they're interested in pursuing an encroachment agreement. Finally, just to note, we had received one question from a neighbor with clarifying questions about how height is calculated. I had provided clarification and links to the supporting documentation and received no further input after that. So given all of that, the staff opinion is that the proposal satisfies those 2 tests for the extension of a legal non-conforming use, and we recommend approval.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. We will now hear from members of the public, and if you're online, please make sure that you deal with the mute, unmute as you're directed, so that, definitely we can hear you here. And if you're online, please remain muted at all times unless specifically directed to do so when it's your turn to speak. Is the applicant or agent present? Okay. Do you wish to make a presentation? Now, I have Jeff's name on my list. You don't look like Jeff, though. So if you could state your name and your residential address, that would be helpful for the record. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Dana Keeper. 507 10th Street, Hanover is the Cobite Engineering office. So my name is Dana Keeper. I'm a senior development planner here from Cobite Engineering on behalf of the applicant. Just wanted to kind of build on what Jake was saying. So basically, this cottage is a pitched roof. So anyone who grew up in an old farmhouse, as you walk towards the wall, you're going to run into the roof on your head. So what he's proposing to do is to build a full 2-story cottage that has a full wall at the edge. So because we're increasing that livable space and enlarging that cottage in height, that triggers a 45-2 minor variance because of the existing setbacks. Overall, it's still well under the height restriction. And where we measure height, which is at mid-peak, it's actually going to be relatively a similar height to where we're at. It's just that roof line is coming up. So sorry, to figure out where to point. Frontage on Harbor Street. So as Jake was mentioning, that makes it a little bit challenging from a front yard and rear yard perspective. So it fronts onto Harbor, and then the rear yard is actually beside the house. I would say initially it was probably meant to front onto Izzard, so it's a long, skinny lot, and the house kind of faces the wrong way. Located in a residential area, and the subject lands are currently host to one single detached cottage. Designated primary urban community, designated shoreline residential, and zoned R1 with some EP. So the proposal is to demolish the existing 1.5-story building and replace it with a new 2-story cottage that maintains the same building footprint and setbacks as the existing cottage. We're also asking for 45-2 to facilitate this. And the subject lands are designated to and zoned to permit residential and accessory uses. The new cottage will be slightly taller than the existing cottage, but it'll have minimal impacts on the surrounding property, and undue adverse effects on surrounding properties are not anticipated, and the proposed use is consistent with the area. We completed an archaeological study and a shoreline hazard study, and both of those were submitted in support. So the new building will be slightly taller than the existing cottage. The wide, shallow lot makes the meeting the required rear and front yard setbacks challenging, and the proposed use consistent with the surrounding areas. There's no anticipated adverse effects on the surrounding properties, and the supporting studies confirm the development is appropriate for this location. That concludes my high-level overview. Very happy to take questions for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. I believe, is Jeff here? Would you like to speak, sir? You don't have to. I just have your name on the list here. So you just state your full name and your address, and the floor is yours.
Jeff Hole, 574 Harbor Street, Port Elgin. We're new to the community. I spent a lot of time up here when I was a kid. We were always very fond of the neighborhoods and the beach area. When me and my wife decided we were at a point in our life where we wanted to purchase a cottage, this was the first area that we thought of. And we're very happy that we were given the opportunity to purchase the cottage that we have. And we just want to update it and make it nicer for our family.
Thank you very much. Is anyone else from the public here to speak in support of the application? Is anybody here from the public with questions, concerns, or objections to the application? Anybody online? Do we have anybody online? Okay. And I don't believe there are any written submissions that weren't in the record.
There are none, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do any members of the committee have any clarifying questions for the planner or the applicant? Member Martin, then Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is actually a question from Ms. Kiefer through Madam Chair. Ms. Kiefer, you had indicated that the mid-peak is going to be slightly taller in the rebuild. Can you help me with what slightly is?
Through you, Madam Chair, we haven't measured what the existing cottage is, but I can tell you that the new mid-peak measurement will be 7 meters.
I thank you, Ms. Kiefer. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor. The 7 meters, the maximum height permitted, again, is what? Tell me again.
And again, through you, Madam Chair, 10 meters.
It is 10 meters, so it's well below. And I'll have a comment later about my drive past today, looking at all the wonderful cottages in the area. But there was a question about the paving stones as an encroachment on town property. How far does it encroach? And I'm assuming it's onto the beach, onto the waterfront. How far do those paving stones encroach onto the beach area?
Candace, could you bring the site plan up again? I did have a slide with it. I don't, through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe we have a measurement on the drawing, but we can bring it up. to
Okay,
give
bring
you
it
a
up.
better
And what are the
visual representation.
plans? And what are the plans for, maybe that question comes later, does it? But what are the plans for those paving stones?
Through you, Madam Chair, the town has requested an encroachment agreement be entered into to recognize that existing encroachment. That is a condition of minor variance, so
No.
that will allow it to continue. I don't know if you, can you zoom in, Candace?
And I saw that where the encroachment agreement was going to be requested, but I also read that the staff didn't support it in the report. It said the staff did not support that. Let me find the clause. It's in there. The staff doesn't support.
I believe just, the way that you just described that the town requested the encroachment agreement, I don't know if
Okay.
the application has about removal or, following through on consideration of an encroachment agreement. So I believe it's in the applicant's ballpark as to where the request comes for the encroachment agreement. But Candace, would you like to comment?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. So when the application was circulated, staff identified that there was an encroachment present. And so in working with the applicant, a recommended condition was asked to be included in the decision sheet that's before you today that says that the encroachment will either be removed or addressed to the satisfaction of the town. And encroachment matters are dealt with by council. So we can't deal with it today as a committee.
Gotcha.
So it will come back if an encroachment application is submitted by the applicant, that will go to council for consideration.
Thank you for that answer. I just know, and Deputy Mayor, I think will vouch for me here, that over the years, as there have been applications and for minor variances on their waterfront, that council saw that as the opportune time to remove any encroachments onto the waterfront. And I just, if we're going to do that, there needs to be some consistency. And I know the applicant's not liking what I'm saying probably about removing, but all I'm saying is that previous councils have said, hey, there's an application, minor variance, applications, that's when the encroachments get removed. It's just a statement that I wanted to make. Yeah.
And important to follow up with, that's a decision for another
Yeah,
body,
exactly.
not the
Exactly.
Committee of Adjustments. So are there any other questions from members? Okay, Dana, you can have a seat. If there's nothing further, I will now declare the public hearing to be closed, and the committee will now discuss the application. And so at this point, you can have comments, opinions, ask further questions if you want. Are there any additional comments that anyone would like to make? Last meeting of the year, folks. Chad, nothing? Your last meeting? Well, I would just, before I look for a recommendation, in terms of the application. I would just like to echo what the Vice Deputy Mayor said about encroachments and again, it's not part of this committee's decision, so that's for another body to decide. That would be council. What we're being asked to do is consider the rebuild with the slight increase in the height for the cottage slash house. And seeing how tall Mr. Hole was, I'm sure that raising the roof a little bit might mean he won't bang his head as much. So maybe that's not such a bad thing to do. But I look now to the committee for a recommendation. We can have the one that the planner recommended granting the application. Council or Member Martin. He's not for me to read the rest of it. So moved by Member Martin that the let's see here. Let me get the correct wording here. Moved by Member Martin that the application for enlargement, extension, or change of legal non-conforming use is hereby granted subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the approval applies only to the development as shown on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. And two, that the concrete paver patio encroachment be removed or that the encroachment be appropriately addressed to the satisfaction of the property owner, which would be the town, where the encroachment exists. So Member Martin has moved that. Can I have a seconder? Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt. Are there any further comments, questions about the motion? Okay, all those in favor? So that motion passes. So our recommendation, the next item on our agenda is that our next meeting, the recommendation is that the January 13th, 2025 Committee of Adjustment meeting be held at 4:30 at the Nuclear Innovation Institute right here. I think we're getting close to being back over in the Plex building, but I guess we're not going to get there for the January meeting. But can I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment? Moved by Councillor Stack that we adjourn at.
Sorry, I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation for the next meeting, just because we're proposing to be at 4:30 instead of 5.
Oh,
Sorry, that's my fault.
okay. So Councillor Stack, will you move the 4:30? Sure you will. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Stack that the next meeting will start at 4:30, not 5 o'clock. So moved by Councillor Stack, seconded by Member Beckett. All those in favor? Thank you. Now for the adjournment motion, moved by Councillor Stack that we adjourn at 5:23 p.m., seconded by Member Zimmerman. All those in favor? The meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you very much.